Welcome, friends, brothers, and sisters, to our channel, Myths and Legends. But see, the Egyptians, they began to worry about this growing population of Israelites amongst them. And so as a solution, the Pharaoh had the people of Israel enslaved. But no matter how much they tried to suppress the Israelites, their population kept growing and growing. To breed well and to grow so stubbornly, even under slavery, must mean that their God has some utility. So the Pharaoh asks of 2 Hebrew wives to kill any baby boys born amongst them, and only to let the girls live. See, the Pharaoh is here a representation of the effect, the casual action related to the eating of the fruit from the garden. In eating the fruit, humanity learns the capacity for good, but to know good you must also learn of evil. This plays out in biblical stories like Cain and Abel and throughout all the way up to the New Testament. But it also plays in the human history surrounding the Bible. See, to Pharaoh, the act of killing children has become an action of good to his own benefit. In his lack of having a sovereign above him, who is to say otherwise? As St. Gregory said, "For the material and the passionate disposition to which human nature is carried when it falls is the female form of life, whose birth is favored by the tyrant. The austerity and intensity of virtue is the male birth, which is hostile to the tyrant, and suspected of insurrection against his rule. Austerity and virtue is related to the masculine. But there is a dark side, the tyrant." In Pharaoh's denial of God, we see Egypt as the new Babylon. It reminds me of the warning God is dead, a warning not meant to be a call of celebration. A fair warning that when the top of the hierarchical pyramid is immortal, those below are just subjects to be enslaved by the tyrant. But the midwives feared God, and instead of killing any boys, they lied to the Pharaoh. In verse 17 of Exodus 1, it states, "The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. They told the Pharaoh that Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwives arrive." Verse 20 says, "So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous." One of the men of these people, Levi, had a child, a son, with a Levite woman. She feared for the life of her son in these times of genocide, so she hid her child for 3 months. Eventually, she decided to send her son off down the Nile in a papyrus basket covered in tar and pitch, so that it may float. Meanwhile, the Pharaoh's daughter goes to bathe down by the bank of the Nile, where she spots the baby. There's a degree of separation that happens here. See, the Pharaoh's daughter asks one of her slaves to go receive the child. That way she doesn't have direct contact with him. She has the slave take the child and nurse him. The child is named Moses, as he was drawn out of the water, from Moshe, to draw out, as Moses will draw his people out of slavery. So now Moses is to be raised by 2 mothers, his biological slave mother, and the Pharaoh's daughter as a kind of mother. As St. Gregory said, "The daughter of the king, being childless and barren, arranged to be called his mother by adopting the youngster. For truly barren is profane education." See, the adoptive mother represents the knowledge of the world, of science and technology, which can impede our spiritual journey if not for the biological mother. His birth mother, who continued to care for him, is the teacher of virtue. The feminine is the womb, that surrounds us, but it also can be a representation of the tomb. The fruitful womb is with the natural mother of wisdom. The barren tomb can be the world that dissipates us. Moses grows up and one day goes to where his people go, as he carries a sense of kinship with them. He sees their hard labors and what they suffer. He sees that the Hebrews are often beaten by the Egyptians. Isolated from the view of the rest of the working Egyptians and Hebrews, he sees an Egyptian abusing an Israelite. Moses looks around to make sure that he doesn't get caught, and he intervenes on the fight. He ends up killing the Egyptian, and with the help of the other, he buries the body in the sand. It's worth noting here that there is a difference between prophets and the Christian and Hebrew tradition to the Muslim tradition. See, in the Quran, prophets can't do any wrong. And so Moses doesn't kill the Egyptian on purpose in the Quran. It's an accident of pushing the Egyptian off of the Israelite. In the Christian and Hebrew tradition, Moses looks left and right to make sure no one's looking and deliberately attacks the Egyptian, killing him. So the next day Moses goes back again to where his people work, and he sees two Hebrews fighting amongst themselves. He confronts them, and one says, "Who made you the ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" So apparently the word was out and even traveled to the Pharaoh's ears. He ordered to have Moses brought to justice and put to death for what he had done. But Moses fled before they could catch him to a place called Midian. The priest there had 7 daughters, and on the day that Moses was resting near a well, the daughters were sent there for water, and they found him. There was also a couple of shepherds that were passing by, and a little conflict started between the 7 daughters and these 2 shepherds. So Moses, as the great mitigator, helped settle the feud between the daughters and the shepherds. So the 7 daughters went and told their father Reuel what Moses had done for them. And Reuel actually means friend of God. And for what he had done, he asks Moses to stay, and Moses agrees that he will stay. Moses eventually marries one of the daughters, Zipporah. Time passes and they have a child together and name him Gershom, meaning something like foreigner there in Hebrew. Moses names his son after his own condition, which is important to him, will be important to us later, so make note of it. Meanwhile, back in Egypt, the slaves' lives worsen, and they cry out to God over their misery, and God hears them and decides to answer them and fulfill the promise of his people, the one he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Genesis 17. As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham. For I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come of you.